You may have heard of Cobalt-60 recently from these viral images of a vial that says drop and run. There were a number of hyperbolic YouTube videos that covered the topic. And Cobalt-60 can be very dangerous in an uncontrolled situation. But in use in medical applications, it can be absolutely life-saving. So I was really excited to see that Westinghouse was partnering with Nordion and PSEG, operator of the Salem plants, to produce Cobalt-60 in US PWRs. And this is something that doesn't happen, at least not on a large commercial scale like they're planning. Production of Cobalt-60 is relatively straightforward. You put some Cobalt-59 into a reactor, it absorbs a neutron, and transmutes into Cobalt-60. And because nuclear reactors have a lot of neutrons floating around from fissions, then this is an ideal method of production. And then once you have Cobalt-60, it's quite convenient. It has a relatively long half-life of just over 5 years, which means that you can get at least a decade or more use out of a single sample. But the reason that we want to use Cobalt-60 is because it has these two high-peaked gammas here. One at 1332 keV and another at 1173 keV. And this gamma radiation is quite strong, and that makes it very suitable for a number of applications. Because these gammas are so strong and reliably produced, their radiation can be used to absolutely kill any kind of microorganisms that might be present on some other object. So one of the primary uses is sterilization of single-use medical devices. These can be things like syringes, gloves, catheters, gowns, anything that can be used around a patient where there's a risk of infection. By making sure that there's no microorganisms or bacteria on it, then we can greatly reduce the risk of infections. The same is true for implantable devices. So if we had orthopedics like replacement knees, heart valves, and more, if someone's getting an artificial hip, this is a fantastic way to sterilize that before it goes into the body, because once it's in, infection can be very damaging. Cobalt-60 can also be used in things like gamma knife cancer treatment, which is a way to treat brain disorders, and the therapy can also be used for treatment of tumors and other abnormalities. The point is there are a lot of life-saving uses that we can use Cobalt-60 for in the medical field. However, despite this, the US currently relies entirely on foreign sources for Cobalt-60, with 20 to 50% of the supply actually coming from Russia. And as we've seen a move away from globalization, the importance of domestic production of vital resources like Cobalt-60 is becoming increasingly apparent. So Westinghouse is partnering with Nordion to develop and deploy a technology that would enable the production of low specific activity Cobalt-60. And here, low specific activity just means that the Cobalt-60 is not going to be overly concentrated too much in one small area, or you'd have less Cobalt-60 per specific gram or unit of mass. This just makes it easier to handle and work with in a specific application. Because Cobalt-60 is such a strong gamma emitter, you don't need a whole lot of it in order for it to be effective. But the change here is that they want to be able to produce it in US PWRs, with a target of meeting 50 to 100% of US demand by the mid-2030s. And it's a really simple but very interesting approach that they're taking in order to do this. The idea is that they're developing what they're calling a cobalt burnable absorber, or COBA, that would integrate Cobalt-59 slugs into the Westinghouse fuel assembly. So what that actually looks like is pretty cool. So to see what this would look like, here we have a top-down view of an open reactor core at just the tops of the fuel assemblies. But then we can take this side view, and here you can see this is the top that we were seeing before, looking down on the core, but the fuel assembly runs down all the way to the bottom like this, and there are these grids and other straps that hold the fuel rods in place. The individual fuel rods run roughly from the top all the way down to the bottom, and this is what contains the uranium fuel. And that's going to be the source of all the neutrons that would then convert our Cobalt-59 into Cobalt-60. But we need a convenient way to insert and remove the Cobalt-60 into the fuel assembly. Luckily, we already have a number of holes and guide tubes that are able to do this. The top nozzle that we saw before and the fuel rods that run down. But in this image, you can see there's an insertion of the control rods at the top. And the control rods insert into these guide tubes and then can be moved in and out of the fuel assembly itself. And that's what's indicated here in yellow at the top. There's a center cluster that holds all the individual control rods together, and then the individual rods slide down into the fuel assembly. And this can be used to control the chain reaction or shut down the reactor as required. But the point is that this center yellow control rod assembly is movable within the fuel assembly itself. So then when we look at the proposed insert that's going to be used to produce the Cobalt-60, it looks really familiar and looks almost exactly like a control rod assembly. You can see there's a center cluster at the top that then holds these individual pins. In this demo picture, it looks like they've shortened them just so that it's more practical to show. But then you can see these individual long pins that run all the way down, and these will go into the same guide tubes that the control rods would normally go into. So they would select locations that don't already have existing control rods, and then be able to insert this into that fuel assembly. And then inside the individual rods, there are these pellets that would contain the Cobalt-59. You can see here there's a number of these individual pellets that are contained inside these rods that would be inserted into the fuel assembly. And it's these individual pellets of Cobalt-59 that will absorb the neutrons that are coming from the reactor fuel and they will eventually transmute into Cobalt-60, which is our ultimate product that we want to get out. And because of the way this assembly is designed, it can be removed from the fuel assembly at its end of life and then shipped out for processing to harvest the Cobalt-60. Westinghouse says that the cobalt burnable absorber integrates the Nordion-engineered Cobalt-59 slugs into the Westinghouse fuel assemblies. It looks like Nordion is going to provide the Cobalt-59, and Westinghouse will design the actual assemblies themselves. Which makes sense because Westinghouse would know the exact dimensions of its fuel assemblies, and Nordion has experience with fabrication of Cobalt-59 slugs. These targets are then irradiated over 3 18-month fuel cycles, which is kind of a long time. I thought maybe they would be able to produce these after a single 18-month cycle, but it looks like they'll need to undergo more radiation than that. So 4.5 years until you first are able to extract and harvest this is quite a long time. But I guess once you have it in there, you want to maximize the amount of production, so letting it sit longer would make sense. The targets are then harvested at the cask loading pit using a Westinghouse-designed workstation, and the whole process is designed to minimize waste and impact on plant operations. This is one thing that operators would certainly be sensitive to. Anything that would introduce delays into the outage is not going to be desirable. Oftentimes, these outages can cost plants several $millions per day, so anything that delays even a few hours is very impactful. So ideally, this effort would be done what we call off-critical path, meaning that there's no impact on the schedule, and you don't really need a whole lot of additional staff in order to support it. But while this is new for US PWRs, this is something that other reactors internationally have been doing for decades. In particular, the CANDU reactors are actually very well suited for producing Cobalt-60 and other medical isotopes. The Pickering and Bruce stations in Canada have been supplying more than 50% of the world's Cobalt-60 for the last several decades, at least since 1971 out of Pickering A. Then later, both Bruce B and Pickering B joined in the 1980s. But CANDU reactors are uniquely well-suited to produce Cobalt-60, and this has to do with the design and layout of the reactor. This is a side view of the individual fuel channels, so each one of these tubes would contain a series of fuel bundles that are pushed in as the reactor operates. Right now, this one is undergoing refurbishment, so a lot of the equipment in the outside has been removed. But these individual tubes and fuel channels are horizontal, with space in between that contains the moderator of heavy water. And so the CANDU reactor is laid out horizontally, unlike vertically for the PWRs and BWRs in the US. Here again, you can see the individual fuel channels that run horizontally through the reactor. And this side here was the face that we saw in the previous image. But what it also has are these vertical control rod and insert channels. And it's these vertical channels that can be used to insert the Cobalt-59. So they can insert the Cobalt-59 samples down into these channels, they sit inside the reactor, and then they can be removed. Unlike the Westinghouse proposed approach where it's inserted directly into the fuel assembly, in the CANDU reactor design it's completely separate in its own channel. The specific channels that they use are called these adjuster channels and adjuster rods. So the CANDU reactor has a couple of different control rods that it uses. It has these main shutoff rods, but it also has these adjuster rods, which are normally stainless steel, which allow for more fine-tuning control. But they can replace these individual adjuster rods with the Cobalt-59 and insert them into the reactor core. And then this is how the Cobalt-59 will receive the neutrons and be bombarded and transmuted into Cobalt-60. And OPG has a nice explanation of this. They too start with Cobalt-59 slugs, just like we saw in the Westinghouse plant, and these slugs are then assembled into bundles to form cobalt adjuster rods. After inspection, they are then placed into the reactor core. Then over the course of about 36 months, the rods are bombarded by neutrons, and the Cobalt-59 changes into becoming Cobalt-60. Then during an outage, they harvest the mature Cobalt-60 adjuster rods, and eventually prepare them to be shipped out in order to be fabricated and used in their final condition. But they have some really cool images of this. So here you can see a collection of the Cobalt-60 that's already been generated. And because it's so very highly radioactive, it does give off the Cherenkov blue glow radiation, which is very cool to see. But here they're lifting up this bundle that contains several samples, it looks like, and then it's going to be placed into this shielding cask. So here it looks like they have a collection of around 9 bundles or so that they're then lifting into place into this shielding cask, which will then be sent out. Very cool to see that. And here's another view of the Cobalt-60 bundles being taken out. They're doing all this work in the spent fuel pool. You can see a number of the spent fuel CANDU bundles that are here. Some of them seem a little bit haphazardly laid, but we'll ignore that for now. But the important thing here is that the Cobalt-60 bundles have been extracted and can be now removed. And it maybe is a little bit hard to tell here, but all of this work is being done underwater. You can see a little bit of reflection here in the lights. And that's again because of the extreme radiation, not just from the Cobalt-60, but all of these old spent fuel bundles here, these old CANDU bundles, they're all giving off a lot of radiation. So all this work has to be done underwater. And eventually, once the bundles are placed inside of the transport and shielding cask, they lift it up out of the water. They're doing a few different things here in this image, actually. First is you can see that there's some water draining off. The way that the cask is most likely designed is that it does have some places where water would collect, and so there's a natural way for it to drain out as they bring it out of the water. You can also see this worker here on the left side. He has a hose spraying water, and this would be used to spray water onto the side of the canister as it comes out. This is to rinse off any kind of outside or external contamination that may be on the cask as they bring it out of the water. And then once it's out of the water, you can see a few more things about it. Here the workers are wiping it down, so they're removing any of the excess water that was on the outside. They rinsed it off with the hose, but they do want to make sure that there's absolutely nothing left on the outside. You can also see that on the top, there's a very heavy lid that has been secured into place. And this is, of course, to prevent any radiation from escaping out of the top. So the entire thing is completely sealed. And the last thing that we can see is that there are these fins on the outside. Because Cobalt-60 and the amount of Cobalt-60 that they put in here is a gamma emitter, those gammas will interact with the steel and other surrounding components and produce some heat. So the fins are there most likely to provide some additional cooling. But you can see it's a very thick steel structure here. That's because the Cobalt-60 gammas can be so strong. You need a lot of shielding in order to protect people outside. This is most likely a combination of lead and steel inside. Then after the Cobalt-60 is harvested and processed at the facility, it can be turned into these individual samples that would be used at the final medical facility or the final device that's going to take the Cobalt-60. So there is some fabrication and manufacturing that maybe has to be done. But the end product is actually quite small here. You can see this is less than 1 inch or only a few centimeters tall. And that's usually more than enough in order to provide enough radiation power in order to sterilize equipment or other things. But it is worth noting that this company that Westinghouse is partnering with, Nordion, they're the same company in Canada that works with Bruce Power and OPG to produce the Cobalt-60 in Canada. So it seems Westinghouse is partnering with a quite reliable company here that's been doing this for a long time. And while Canada is the largest producer of Cobalt-60 for the United States, last year, and I think continuing on now, there are a number of concerns about tariffs and potential interruptions of supply. The Source Security Working Group, which is an advocacy group that works often with the American Nuclear Society, noted that Cobalt-60 tariffs would undermine U.S. healthcare, and that currently the import of Cobalt-60 from Canada is duty-free under the USMCA, or NAFTA, and that it continues to be exempt under the Emergency Economic Powers Act. But they are warning that future tariffs could impact supply. And therefore, from a strategic standpoint, it does make sense that Westinghouse would try to start to produce a domestic supply of Cobalt-60. So we'll have to see how all that shakes out in the future, but I think any additional production of Cobalt-60 in U.S. reactors or CANDU reactors is certainly something that's going to benefit absolutely everybody. If you found this video interesting, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help out enormously, and you get to stay up to date on all kinds of interesting nuclear topics like this one. So thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.